probably outside the realm of what the Constitution was saying. And that's what riled up conservatives about this issue for a long time, is that that decision itself was one that they would look back and say, that was not decided well. Now, that doesn't mean it isn't precedent, okay, or some people might call it settled law.
Sure.
But so it is going to be a major sticking issue. But go back and look at it. I remember when I was a spokesperson, like Raj Shah, the deputy press secretary, is going to move over and do full-time communications for this nominee. I was a spokesperson for Justice Roberts. I just knew Roe v. Wade kind of based on the general idea of what I knew growing up. But I'd never gone to law school, and I was getting all these questions about the right to privacy. And I remember going to the staff secretary at the time, who happened to be Brett Kavanaugh, and saying, can you help me understand? I thought this was supposed to be about abortion rights, and everyone's asking me about the right to privacy. And he said, it's a great question. Let me walk you through it. And that's when I first understood how the decision was actually made. I do think there's a lot of hysteria around it. However, it doesn't mean that people don't feel extremely passionately. And of course, it's going to rally up the president's base, but it will rally up the liberals' base as well. And I think that the president is right, and he will probably be cautious, and he will say this over and over, that I'm not going to ask the nominee how he or she would rule specifically on this issue. But it will be the undercurrent of all the fights for the next several weeks.
Okay. Mr. Stirewalt.
She's right. She's right.
Oh, smart move.
Yeah,
Smart move.
exactly.
Start with that. She's right. Thank you guys for having me here today.
Nice to see you.
Happy Independence Day week. Yay.
Yay. Where's the flag?
For the record. So Quinnipiac University has a new poll out today that looks at Americans' attitudes on this issue. And guess what? Overwhelmingly, Americans don't want to see Roe versus Wade overturned. That's by a 2-to-1 margin, and even a majority among men. So the hysteria here is it's damaging, because nobody's saying that. The way that abortion, the way that access to elective abortions has been rolled back in the United States hasn't been by an effort. I'm telling you, you're the lawyer. Hasn't been rolled back through big, we're going to knock it over, it's going to be kaput. Instead, what's happened is states have found ways, conservative states, have found ways to put different limitations on access to abortion. In Texas, in Alabama. There are 20 states or so in which getting an abortion is in those places and done it, and none of that has had to do with overturning Roe v. Wade.
Right.
It's been about taking the long track back. Conservatives started this 30 and 40 years ago, a long track back to before Roe, when how can we make this a federal issue? How can we make this for the states? How can federalism apply here? And that's what's happening. But what you've heard and what I've read from Jeffrey Toobin and other people that have said that African Americans will no longer be welcome in elite universities, that all of this stuff, it's worse even than the stuff I heard when Robert Bork was the nominee many moons ago. And it's not good for the discussion, number one. But number two, they're creating a problem for Democrats. They create this monster. They say, well, this terrible, evil human being is going to rise up out of the belly of the swamp and come and ruin your lives. And then this person's going to walk out, and you know what they're going to say? Oh, he seems all right. She seems nice. And that's what happened with Roberts. That's what happened with Gorsuch. These heinous expectations are met with a nice, competent person, and people go, oh, okay.
Wow, it's interesting. Yeah, heinous expectations met with a nice, competent person. So that sounds a lot like it's just the rhetorical hype, the vitriol, Juan. Really, we've seen in the past that this type of thing has happened, and then you see in terms of the person who comes forward, like in the case of Neil Gorsuch, somebody who has been, well respected and admired and complimented in terms of how he's comported himself thus far.
Well, I could make the same argument. Going back to Merrick Garland, he was well respected, highly rated, and never given the opportunity to have even a hearing, much less a vote. But I think the big point here is that we live in different times, Kimberly. I was talking with Abby Huntsman today on Outnumbered,
right? I saw.
And she said to me, she had Justice Scalia's son on Fox and Friends, and that he said to her, his dad was approved 98-0.
Yep.
Now you think about this. 98-0. He's a qualified Cont 1 so-called liberal Democrat voted against Justice Scalia. But in 2018, we live in a situation that's far different in terms of how polarized our country is, and we have a far different president. So my colleagues here on this panel say, oh, but he could be a nice guy. And of course, Neil Gorsuch was a nice guy, and don't worry about it. They have all these terrible things. My pal Chris Direwall comes from D.C. and he says, well, what's all this black people won't be in elite institutions? Well, affirmative action is a big deal for the Supreme Court, and they set the rules for how schools can consider young people, especially young people coming from underprivileged conditions. But the larger point to my thinking is this, that what you're looking at now is approving a fifth conservative justice in polarized political times, potentially creating a rubber stamp in the Supreme Court for a conservative agenda. And people will say, well, but, you know, President Trump says he's not going to ask about abortion. It's not a litmus test for the conservatives. So let me read you a quote that comes from Donald Trump. He says, that'll happen automatically, in my opinion, because I'm putting pro-life justices on the court. It'll go back to the states, and the states then can make the determination. So this is not a secret to liberals, and it's not a secret to conservatives. He wants justices who will undo Roe v. Wade.
Well, I don't know if he wants to undo, but that pro-life, or in terms of their viewpoints, but he was pretty specific with Maria saying that he wasn't going to ask that question or single it out as one of the requirements versus a constitutionalist that would actually just uphold the Constitution and construe and read the case law.
But he said, but he said that during the campaign, right?
Right.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So what he said is, I will work to nominate conservative justices. Then and even if the president never even asks them what the litmus test
that's
is,
the idea
it's just
the Federalist Society.
And it's what
that's the list.
But it is also one of the factors that he campaigned on. He promised to put justices on the bench like Neil Gorsuch, and that is, you know, widely lauded by the Republicans and conservatives that he put somebody that was in keeping with his campaign promise, Tom.
Also, yes, that's what you want. Instead of going back to what he said during the campaign, look back to Gorsuch. Back to the way that was handled. The president, he has no problem turning up the temperature on issues, but on this issue, I think he approaches things in a fairly normal establishment kind of a way. You know, he's appointing people that I think most people are. He's going to appoint people that most people are comfortable with, and he's probably going to get it passed. It's not going to be 98-0, but he'll probably get it done. And I'm not even concerned by the kind of things that Susan Collins says. The kind of judges that get appointed now are not the kind of judges like in the Judge Bork days that were advocates for overturning Roe v. Wade. Most of them keep kind of mum on their personal views on these things, and so I think it's going to be non-controversial.
All right, we shall see.
Just add one little thing, which is that you know, the left uses the idea of Roe being overturned as the right uses the idea of guns being abolished.
Right.
And it is the way to fire up your base. Neither of those issues are actually on the table,
right.
But that is what people will use. So we can be quite calm about like the types of judges that are going to get out there and how they might rule, but that the spin is going to be what it is. But the formidable infrastructure around conservative nominees, I think, is really in place because of how Robert Bork was treated in the 80s. And the conservatives figured it out that they are not going to let this happen to another nominee. The Democrats had to do the same thing for Elena Kagan and Sotomayor during the Obama administration. And the judicial confirmation, timing is everything in politics, and President Trump seems to have great luck when it comes to
One last point on this, which is I hear conservatives say, you know, Roe v. Wade's pretty settled. Chief Justice Roberts says it's pretty settled. So stare decisis, which means that you don't overturn things without cause, is going to hold. But what did we see from Gorsuch? You say he's highly praised, Kimberly. He came on, and I think it's a week or two ago, Chris, he just voted to overturn a 40-year law that had regard to how unions were able to collect so-called agency fees or dues from people who may disagree with their political agenda. He overturned it.
But no one's saying these people aren't conservative. He didn't do it by himself, right?
Yeah.
No one's saying that these people aren't conservative.
Yes.
And these are the kind of justices that any Republican president would be picking, because this has been, as Dana says, a 40-year project. This is the most important thing to many, many, many conservatives, is retaking control of the Supreme Court, and they have not hidden that.
And that was one of the main deciding factors for many of the people, including evangelicals, a quarter of them that cast a vote on the ballot for now President Trump. Will Democrats' urgent calls to abolish ICE backfire on them in the midterm elections? All those details next.
As the debate over illegal immigration rages on, President Trump is hammering Democrats that are pushing to abolish ICE, suggesting their antics may actually help Republicans in the midterms.
I hope they keep thinking about it because they're going to get beaten so badly. You know, ICE, these are the guys that go in and take MS-13 and they take them out. You get rid of ICE, you're going to have a country that you're going to be afraid to walk out of your house. I love that issue if they're going to actually do that. Between Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi and getting rid of ICE and having open borders, and the biggest thing, you have open borders, all it's going to do is lead to massive, massive crime. That's going to be their platform. Open borders, which equals crime. I think they'll never win another election, so I'm actually quite happy about it.
But not all Democrats are on board. Several lawmakers appear to distance themselves from the far left's calls to get rid of immigration and customs enforcement.
Abolishing ICE will accomplish nothing unless we change the Trump policies. The Trump administration is embarked on a train wreck, a moral train wreck.
When you abolish ICE now, you still have the same president with the same failed policies. I think there's a lot of other things we can do before we get to that point.
What has to change are the policies, and the people that are making these policies are making horrendous decisions like separating kids from their parents.
All right, so you heard the Democrats certainly on message now, Chris. They're saying policies are what that's not changed, not ICE. But it is pretty amazing that the Republicans went from being on defense on immigration over the family separation issue and the immigration proposals failing to pass in the House, to now the Republicans are on offense because some Democrats have said abolishing ICE is a good idea.
Right, and what you always want to do in a midterm election is define your, you want to do it in any election, but particularly in a midterm, define your opponent, get out there and scuff them up. Democrats have had great sport with Republicans over the year where you find the dumbest thing said by the dumbest person anywhere in North America who is a member of the opposing political party, and then you say, they're all Todd Akins. They're all they're all Christine O'Donnell's. They're all this thing. So now it's the Republicans' turn they're going to try to take it back and say, see, all of you people, which of course is like a tiny fraction of Democrats feel this way, but everybody wants no borders and everybody wants to abolish immigration and customs enforcement, and you just keep saying it until it sounds like it's true, until people believe it, even if it's not, and that's why we hate politics.
When he said that the Democrats, you know, one of your ideas is to scuff up your opponent, but instead the Democrats, it's like, why do you keep hitting yourself?
Well,
why do you keep
Stop hitting yourself.
It's a strange argument to have. I mean, last week they had the separation of families, and now they're attacking ICE. I was talking, Christopher Hahn was on my radio show today, Democratic strategist, smart guy, but he said that, Tom, this is just like when Republicans call for the abolition of the IRS. And I thought I had a very good answer for him.
Okay, what was it?
I said, yeah, but Chris, nobody likes the IRS and everybody likes ICE. That's the difference.
There is a big difference. And Kimberly, is this also an example of the Democrats just being all for obstruction of Trump, but not offering a credible alternative to Trump? Like, if your alternative is abolish ICE, and there's nothing in between that you're talking about, it doesn't seem like they've gone too far.
It just doesn't make sense. It sounds cuckoo. That's what he's saying. He's like, look, they're being obstructionist. They're just against everything. They don't have the solutions and ideas. They just want to be against it, to be against. It makes absolutely no sense from a public safety perspective to abolish ICE. Okay, I'm so sorry. And then what? The crossing guards after school will go over and police the border. I mean, I don't understand where they're coming from on this. And I do think that it's so polarizing, so off the charts, that they're actually alienating people who were their tried and true voting base. And there's those that are like, okay, they want to leave the party because it's becoming and sounding too fringe, too extreme, even from rhetoric from people like Kristen Gillibrand or Maxine Waters or Nancy Pelosi. And you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. This is not the Democrat Party that I signed up for to begin with, or that we know from, you know, years on back. What are they doing? And then you see some of the recent elections and people coming forward from the party. They're saying this is not representative of values and ideals that we share, and it's become just, you know, kind of like frightening out there in terms of some of the reactions and the pushback and calling for people to be assaulted and attacked and, you know, driven away.
A lifetime of abuse is what was recommended today. One, you saw some of the commentary there from yesterday's Sunday shows from Democrats saying, whoa, whoa, tap the brakes, we're not really for that. But it makes people that are either establishment or moderate Democrats basically have to sound like the school marm when what you have is an insurgent base, or, you know, a restless base of progressives and now even some socialists saying, that actually we are not for playing around. We want serious action. And so is abolishing ICE where they run on in the next couple months?
I think there's a lot of support for reforming ICE. I don't know about abolishing ICE. And I think that there are people, though, who are so concerned, given the policy of separating children from parents, that they say, what is going on? Why do we have what President Trump during the campaign said it would be a deportation force, going in and raiding homes, disrupting social events, going into workplaces, grabbing people? People are like, what is going on? I mean, we were talking earlier about going after the IRS or something. I remember when conservatives were calling the ATF jackbooted thugs for doing this kind of thing. And so you can imagine, Dana, that there are people on the left, and it's not just on the left, but even in the middle, who are like, whoa, you know, this, remember, I know I'm cuckoo, right? Cuckoo,
I didn't say you were cuckoo.
But
don't put words in my mouth. I said the things that they're saying sound cuckoo, like abolish ICE with nothing in place.
Think here's the thing to keep in mind, Kimberly. Mr. Cuckoo says that ICE was just created about 15, 20, right after 9/11.
Well, right, because before it was called something else.
Before we had different organizations.
There was not a Homeland Security.
Yeah, we had a different organization. We took care of the crime. We certainly did, if that was the issue. But we didn't have this singular group, which was created to stop terrorism from being festered or fostered inside the United States. It has a totally different purpose under this president, which is why you hear even moderate Democrats saying the problem is the president's policies and the way that he's using ICE. So if it's necessary to reform ICE so that it can't be used to break apart families, break children away from parents, then do it.
But the thing also is that it's not even ICE that does the family separation. If a family separation is needed at the border, it's the Customs and Border Patrol. So it's just a little bit.
It gets mixed up because who comes and grabs the kid inside the United States? Okay.
All right. I get it where the rhetoric is going. Anyway, a socialist primary victory sends political shockwaves among her.
Welcome back to The Five. The spotlight is on what some are saying is an apparent divide among Democrats. Senator Tammy Duckworth warning her party about moving too far to the left. This comes in the wake of socialist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's upset win over longtime Democratic Congressman Joe Crowley in New York last week.
I think it's the future of the party in the Bronx, where she is. I think that we as legislators need to listen to our constituency and get out there. I think what she did was she did the hard work. She pounded the pavement and she was out there talking to every one of her constituents.
Are you concerned at all that your party is going too far to the left to either win in the midterms or win back the White House?
Well, I think that you can't win the White House without the Midwest, and I don't think that you can go too far to the left and still win the Midwest.
Ocasio-Cortez, a former organizer for Senator Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign, she's firing back, pointing out that policies to the left of Hillary Clinton won in several Midwestern states. Kimberly, what do you make of this?
You know, I think it's pretty interesting. She's a compelling, pretty much betting that Crowley, who was well established within the Democratic Party, someone who was supposed to be seen as, part of the future of the Democratic Party in terms of the leadership, perhaps succeeding Nancy Pelosi, was, taken out like that by a relative newcomer. But, I mean, some of the policies similar, yes, to Bernie Sanders. She campaigned alongside him. But, given the relative level of the seat, et cetera, it was like covering all across the networks, this weekend and all the Sunday shows. So, look, they're looking to it as a momentum, enthusiasm generator for the party. But I think it's fraught with problems in terms of being that far left is not necessarily, kind of sort of mainstream election guaranteeing, wins. People go, whoa, this seems a little fringe. This is not workable or tenable. So therefore, I'm feeling even more alienated from the party.
Huh. So, Chris and Dana, do me a favor and walk through some things. Let's say free education, free health care, guaranteed incomes. I think a lot of people who are populists, so they would identify both with Sanders and Trump, would say, yeah, those are things that we want.
Absolutely. And in fact, when we talk about the shifting political dynamics inside the country, one of the things that's going on is the big move of poor and working class white voters away from the Democratic Party and to the Republican Party. Well, guess what? They're going to bring the same demands with them when they get there. And for those voters, things like, you know, the Republican stalwart lines about we're going to reform Social Security. No. We're going to roll back Obamacare. Stop. So as the Republican base is shifting, they're getting new mandates from their folks. Now, none of that is to say that it's workable for Democrats to build a strategy, and no one would, to build a strategy around a 28-year-old first-time Congresswoman from the Bronx. And the Republicans would like to make her the face of the Democratic Party. I see the red socialist fist back there for added effect.
It's so subtle. How did you miss it?
It was very. I'm going to wear my Che Guevara T-shirt next time.
It's under there, right?
It's underneath. But my point being, again, Republicans want to turn her into the face of the Democratic Party. Democrat leaders, I'm sure, are biting their tongues and
yes,
saying, nice for you.
They don't want to say anything bad about her. But this really is the Democrats' Tea Party moment. The energy and intensity and passion that these younger people are bringing to their movement and to their party just might be enough for them to take back the House. And it's certainly going to make primaries in places like where a Joe Crowley is, you know, lazy, doesn't campaign well, doesn't even show up to his debate. Like, yeah, they're going to lose. But is it enough to form a governing majority? And I think you could ask John Boehner or Paul Ryan if that's true.
Yeah,
that's a good question.
Boehner's moan is
So
long.
now for our own Che Guevara.
Yes, all of our stories today is that Democrats are pushing their luck, Juan.
Okay.
And yes, why do they keep picking far-left people as their stars? Elizabeth Warren, whoever you pick, Bernie Sanders. I mean, they love these far-left politicians. But, I mean, come on, look at her. I'd vote for her. Crowley, I mean, look, she knocked on doors. Tammy Duckworth was right. This isn't it's not even that big of an upset when you look at.
Oh, it's not an upset.
No, she knocked on doors. She did the work.
Her tennis shoes?
Yeah, she was fantastic.
Because they were saying she didn't really work that hard, and she posted a picture of the tennis shoes that she wore walking her district and how they were completely worn on the bottom.
Wow.
Yeah. And like, she did a lot of miles in them. She worked for it, and the Tea Party Republicans worked for it too.
No, I mean,
yeah, I cut him off.
It's Crowley. He was lazy.
Enough.
This seat was ripe for the picking, and Crowley was lazy, and he deserved to lose. But no, she's not going to be a star, and the Democratic Party is going too far to the left. Thank you for letting me finish.
People said Hillary Clinton didn't work hard enough too in terms of skipping some of the states that she
You're only. I would just say one word because no one else ever will. Again,
what?
In favor of Joe Crowley, he had. That was a rigged district. He was handed that.
Trigger word.
He inherited. He inherited that district from his political mentor. Got in without having to run for it the first time.
Yeah.
Thereafter, used the power of incumbency. That is more of a reflection of how crooked New York politics are than anything.
Hey, slow down, slow down.
This has turned into a bigger game.
Democrat Maxine Waters firing back at her critics, including her own party's leadership. You're going to see some fireworks when we return.
I just want the green, want the money, want the cash. No, we're gonna rock down to Electric Avenue.
Good song choice.
Maxine Waters is not backing down. In an interview after encouraging people to confront members of the Trump administration over its immigration policy.
Leadership like Chuck Schumer's will do anything that they think is necessary to protect their leadership. And I was blessed with the kind of strength that does not allow me to be intimidated by the likes of Donald Trump. I think he does not deserve to stop me. They want me to run away. They want me to stop talking. They want me to be quiet. But he can't do that to me. I won't stand for it.
Meanwhile, at a Los Angeles rally this weekend, Waters addressed
kicking me out of Congress, talking about shooting me. All I have to say is this. If you shoot me, you better shoot straight. There's nothing like a wounded animal.
Okay. Who knew? All right, so the issue, and I want to start with you, Tom. The issue here is...
I'm not supposed to use the word animal.
Yeah, well, that's definitely not good. And
well, we were both chuckling at that, but I want to... No one's threatening to shoot her, are they? Or am I wrong about that?
Have you been on the internet lately? It's a pretty gross place.
It's a gross place.
It's a pretty gross
Okay,
place.
so there's some people I see. Well, she mentioned with the censoring, some people are saying censoring me, shooting me. I thought
I've been in Dana's mentions sometimes, and I can tell you the internet is a gross and terrible. It's wonderful, but it's also a gross and terrible place too.
Yeah.
Mean place.
But Tom, the real problem here is that, of course, the Republicans want her to keep talking. They would love for her to keep talking. It's the Democratic leadership that is trying to get her to not talk, right?
Yes, and but they're not going to stop her, and she's very. She's interesting to listen to. You know, I'd have her on my show. I mean,
I didn't know that. You're a fan?
Well, and it's just she has a. She is. You got to admit, she's interesting. There are interesting people in politics. Donald Trump is one. She is another.
This
right?
is true.
Well,
she is interesting.
Well, the other thing, though, that today, I mean, it is just getting to be too much. You know, today, we just found out that Rand Paul had
awful.
a threat
Capitol
against
Police,
his family, and the Capitol Hill Police
With an axe?
arrested someone who said he wanted to. This guy that they arrested said he wanted to chop up his family and kill him with an axe. And so, is it rhetoric? I'm not for that kind of rhetoric. You can have free speech, and I don't think anyone is suggesting to Maxine Waters that she not be able to articulate what are the policies that she thinks would be better, like what is persuasive, but encouraging people to go out and harass others who are serving their country or who have been elected in a free and fair election. It has gotten to be too much.
She's done it, though. I think I remember her last week calling for people to harass the White House employees.
Yeah, exactly. This is the very thing. All right, so Juan, Maxine Waters, a fixture from time immemorial. She's probably been in Congress for 40 years. Right. Leader, if you're Nancy Pelosi, you're looking at this, you got a problem. You have a person who is drawing too much heat on a subject, and nobody's going to tell Maxine Waters to stop talking, right?
Well, they're trying to. And by the way, just before I go into that, let me just say Jeb Hensarling, Congressman, Republican from Texas, I thought he was very brave. He stood up and said, you know, I don't agree with anything Maxine Waters says, but it's outrageous that people are threatening her life.
Oh, yeah.
And so I just thought, Jeb Hensarling, hats off to you.
But she's the one also calling for people to be attacked and harassed.
No. She never called for violence. She said she had no problem with absolutely shunning people, asking them to leave or shouting at them when they're in the grocery store.
well, how is that something conduct becoming? That's
I agree with
certainly
you on that.
Not, you know, embracing the civility that we've all been talking about. So she should not get a pass for that. It's like,
I agree.
Like,
if you want it, that's legit.
I'm going to take it all the way here, 3/4, but not all the way. When you even encourage actions like that and rhetoric and that kind of vitriol, you know, violence and physical assaultive conduct can ensue.
But that's different than saying that she's calling for violence.
I think it's bad too.
But we wouldn't say that the president is responsible for violence because he has used coarse terms. We wouldn't say that she is to blame for violence, right?
I didn't say that. I said that she is not to be commended for her rhetoric. I think it is divisive, and I think it's uncalled for, and it's totally lacking in civility, reciprocal civility.
Thumbs down. If you're watching us right now, you're probably escaping the scorching, disgusting heat wave. How we here at